The gym was nearly empty that morning. Just the hum of the treadmill, the clink of iron plates, and the steady rhythm of rain tapping against the big glass windows. Jake Miller liked it that way, quiet, early, and alone. He wasn't there to chat or flex or make friends. He came to sweat, to breathe, to remember who he used to be before life got messy, before war, before the divorce, before raising a 10-year-old daughter who still asked why mommy didn't live with them anymore. Just another morning for a quiet single dad veteran trying to hold his world together. Jake adjusted the barbell on his shoulders, took a breath, and started his squats. On his neck, just visible beneath the collar of his faded gray t-shirt, was a tattoo, small, sharp, and simple, a trident entwined with a set of initials. Most people never noticed it. And the few who did, didn't ask. But today, someone did. A voice, calm but authoritative, cut through the sound of weights dropping. "Excuse me, that tattoo, where did you get it?" Jake froze mid-set. He turned. A woman stood a few feet away, tall, athletic, and confident, wearing a navy training shirt. Her eyes were sharp, the kind that measured you in seconds. Jake's instinct kicked in. He gave a polite nod. "Ma'am, just something from a long time ago." She took a step closer. "That's not just something. That's the SEAL trident, and those initials, that's Task Force Raven, isn't it?" Jake's grip tightened on the bar. Few people knew about Task Force Raven. It wasn't something you saw in the news. It was the kind of unit that did the hard jobs, the quiet jobs, the ones that didn't make headlines but saved lives all the same. "Used to be," Jake said softly, setting the bar down. The woman's expression shifted, from curiosity to respect. "I served under Commander Brooks." "You must have been one of his men." Jake gave a half smile. "Brooks was a good man." Her voice softened. "He was my mentor." For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Two worlds colliding by chance, bound by something most people would never understand. She extended her hand. "Commander Emily Carter." He hesitated but shook it. "Jake Miller." Just Jake now. Over the next few weeks, they'd see each other often. Emily ran the SEAL gym program, mentoring younger recruits and veterans trying to get back on their feet. Jake wasn't officially part of it, he just worked out there quietly after his shift at the hardware store. But she started noticing little things, the way he'd help the younger guys with their form. The way he'd clean up the equipment after others left. The way he'd slip a 20 into the gym's donation box without saying a word. One afternoon, she saw him sitting outside the gym, talking to a teenager who looked troubled, a recruit who'd just failed his second qualifying test. Jake was patient, steady. "You don't fail unless you quit," he said. "And quitting's the only thing they can't train you to undo." Emily watched from a distance, realizing that Jake wasn't just some quiet man with a past. He was still serving, in his own way. But one day, something changed. Jake didn't show up. Not that day. Not the next. Not for a week. Emily asked around, and one of the front desk staff handed her a note he'd left behind. It was short: "Thanks for letting me use the gym. I've got to take care of my daughter for a bit, she's sick. Tell the kid who failed his test he's tougher than he thinks. Jake." Emily didn't know why that note hit her so hard. Maybe it was the simplicity. Maybe it was the quiet way he lived, always giving, never asking. She decided to visit. It wasn't hard to find him. A small house, old truck in the driveway, a swing set in the yard. When Jake opened the door, surprise flashed across his face. "Commander Carter? What are you? I came to check on you." "And your daughter," she said, holding up a grocery bag. "I brought soup." Jake smiled, a little embarrassed but genuinely touched. Inside, the house was modest, worn but warm. A child's drawings on the fridge. A photo of Jake in uniform beside one of him holding a laughing little girl. "Her name's Lily," he said quietly. "Flu hit her hard, but she's tough. Like her mom was." They sat for a while. Talked about service, sacrifice, and the strange quiet after the noise of war. Emily saw in Jake something she hadn't realized she missed, the simple courage of showing up, even when nobody's watching. Before leaving, she noticed another tattoo on his wrist, a small heart with Lily's name inside. "You've been through a lot," she said softly. Jake shrugged. "We all have. It's what we do after that counts." A few months later, the gym held a Veterans Day fundraiser. Emily had been trying to find a speaker, someone real, someone who could talk about resilience without the buzzwords and cliches. Jake refused at first. "I'm not much of a talker." But when he stepped up to the mic that night, standing before a crowd of young recruits, veterans, and their families, something shifted. He spoke simply. "I used to think being strong meant never asking for help," he said. "But then I had a kid, and I realized strength is just love that doesn't quit. Whether it's for your country, your team, or your family, it's the same thing." The room was silent. Even Emily found herself blinking back tears. Afterward, she walked up to him. That was exactly what they needed to hear. Jake smiled. Maybe what I needed to say, too. Weeks later, Jake was back at the gym, spotting a young recruit who looked nervous before his first big lift. "Breathe," Jake said. "You've got this." The recruit nodded and smiled. Emily watched from across the room, arms crossed, a quiet smile on her face. The rain was falling again outside, just like the first day they met, and as Jake moved through his set, the trident tattoo on his neck caught the light for just a moment, like a reminder that even the quietest lives can still carry the mark of something extraordinary. Sometimes, the strongest people aren't the loudest or the most visible. They're the ones who keep showing up, who help others quietly, who carry their scars not as wounds, but as proof that kindness, service, and love never really retire. The weeks rolled into months, and that little SEAL gym became more than a place for push-ups and pull-ups. It became a place of second chances. Jake didn't plan it that way. He just kept showing up. Helping out where he could. Fixing things that broke. Encouraging the ones who were breaking. Soon, the younger recruits started calling him Coach Jake, and when he wasn't there, they noticed. One morning, Emily walked in to find a small group of trainees gathered around Jake as he taped up one of their wrists. "Remember," he said, "the body's easy to train. It's your mind you've got to convince." They nodded like he'd just said something sacred. Emily smiled quietly. She'd seen plenty of decorated officers and hardened soldiers, but there was something about Jake's calm, grounded presence that did what no medal or speech could. It healed. Then came the day that changed everything. A storm had rolled in off the coast, heavy winds, cold rain. The gym had closed early, but Jake stayed behind to help Emily lock up. That's when her phone buzzed. A call from the base hospital. There'd been an accident. A Humvee had rolled during a training exercise. One of the recruits, the same young man Jake had mentored, the one who'd once failed his test, was in critical condition. Without hesitation, they both rushed to the hospital. When they arrived, the corridors were silent except for the hum of machines. The young man's parents weren't there. They lived 3 states away. Emily spoke to the nurse, then turned to Jake. "They said he's asking for you." Jake froze. "For me?" She nodded. Jake walked into the room quietly. The boy was pale, hooked up to tubes, but his eyes lit up faintly when he saw him. "Coach," he whispered. Jake pulled up a chair and took his hand. "Hey, kid. You hang in there, you hear me? You're tougher than this." The boy smiled weakly. "You told me, never quit, remember?" Jake squeezed his hand. "That's right." Emily stood in the doorway, watching the scene unfold, a quiet veteran, a wounded recruit, and a bond that spoke louder than any salute or ceremony ever could. Hours later, the boy was stable. The doctor said he'd make it. When Jake stepped out into the hallway, exhausted but relieved, Emily looked at him and said softly, "You just saved another one, Jake." He shook his head. "Nah. He saved himself. I just reminded him who he was."